Imagine waking up and finding your entire world completely rewritten. That is exactly what happened to ancient Greece in the 8th century BC. Overnight, population levels exploded, massive stone temples shattered the horizon, and a long silent world suddenly learned how to write again. But this wasn't a peaceful golden age. It was a brutal, chaotic war for absolute power. What if everything you thought you knew about the birth of civilization was wrong? We are taught that history moves slowly. We are told that societies grow step by gradual step. But the archaeological record reveals a completely different story. In a single century, the Greek world experienced a sudden, violent transformation that mirrors our own modern tech revolutions. By the end of this video, you will see exactly how a desperate race for survival created the modern world. You will discover the hidden economic crisis that forced thousands of people to flee their homes on leaky boats, and the shocking style war that took place inside ancient graveyards. This isn't just guesswork. After analyzing decades of archaeological data, from the massive spike in Athenian burial plots to the sudden appearance of exotic Near Eastern gold bands in local tombs, the truth becomes undeniable. The 8th century BC was a digital revolution without the internet. Here is the catch. This sudden explosion of culture wasn't caused by peace. It was triggered by intense competition, fear, and a desperate race to secure the ultimate resource of the ancient world. Think of it this way. Before this era, Greece was trapped in a dark age. Communities were small, isolated, and quiet. But within a few decades, everything changed. Cities started mapping themselves onto the world of the gods, building massive monumental temples, like the 100-foot-long Hecatompedon on Samos. Why did they suddenly spend so much wealth on the gods? And why did they completely change the way they buried their dead? The answers lie within a hidden social civil war between the ultra-wealthy elite and the common people. Let's look at the evidence. Our story starts in the dirt of the Athenian cemeteries. For centuries, the elite in Athens had a very specific way of showing off. When a rich man died, he was cremated on a private pyre. His bones were placed in a beautiful pot, surrounded by weapons, silver, and gold. It was an exclusive, expensive statement of high status. But then, right around 800 BC, the status quo shattered. Suddenly, the wealthy stopped cremating their dead. They switched entirely to inhumation, burying the body directly in the ground. Even crazier. The gold and silver practically vanished from the graves. Now, why does this matter? It looks like the common community finally rebelled against the obnoxious displays of the rich. The community forced the elites to conform. It was an ancient anti-flexing law. But the rich didn't give up that easily. They found a brilliant loophole. Instead of hiding wealth inside a dark hole in the ground, they built monumental giant marker vases called dipylon amphorae to stand above the graves. These pots were massive. They were covered in highly stylized geometric scenes showing crowded funerals and massive naval battles. But it gets worse. Inside these very same graves, archaeologists found a massive contradiction. While the outside pottery looked traditional and conformed to community rules, the inside contained exotic foreign gold bands inspired by Near Eastern art. The rich were living a double life. In public, they pretended to be humble citizens. In private, they obsessed over exotic luxury. It was a literal style war. Then, around 700 BC, the elite changed the game again. They abandoned these cemeteries entirely. They invented primary cremation, burning the corpse right inside a highly expensive custom-built tomb. If the common people were going to crowd into the traditional cemeteries, the rich would simply price them out of the market. But the battle for status didn't stop at the graveyard. It spilled over into the world of the gods. During the Dark Age, religion was simple. You went to a mountaintop or a clearing, you said a prayer, and you sacrificed an animal. The gods didn't have houses. But in the 8th century, Greece went on a temple-building spree. Suddenly, permanent cult buildings began popping up everywhere. At Kalapodi, at Tegea, and at Eretria, communities started investing massive amounts of manual labor to build homes for the deities. Think of it this way. A temple wasn't just a place to pray, it was a massive territorial flag. By building a permanent stone or mud brick temple on the edge of your land, you were telling your neighbors, "This territory belongs to us, and our God is defending it." Look at the sanctuary of Hera at Pericora. It was built in a rugged, waterless harbor far away from the city center of Corinth. It served no practical purpose, but it commanded the shipping lanes of the Corinthian Gulf. By building there, the Corinthians staked an unmissable claim to the sea. But the real revolution was happening inside the temples. This was the birth of the cult statue. Before this era, mainland Greeks didn't use physical images of their gods. But now you could walk into a temple and stand literally face-to-face with a divine entity. The Iliad describes this perfectly. Women marching in a procession to lay a beautiful, expensive robe directly onto the knees of a statue of Athene. This completely changed the human psychology. The god was no longer a distant force in the sky. The god was a permanent resident of your town, a powerful ally who demanded your protection and your money. Archaeologists tracking the number of simple bronze pins found in Peloponnesian sanctuaries noticed something crazy. In the 10th century, there were almost none. By the 8th century, the numbers surged into the thousands. Everyone was trying to buy the favor of the gods, but more importantly, they were trying to outdo their neighbors. This constant need to flex status directly created the world's most famous athletic event, the Olympic Games. Tradition says the first Olympics happened in 776 BC. Before this, Greeks held funeral games. If a rich warrior died, his family threw a random pop-up athletic competition. The rules were chaotic, and the prizes were highly valuable items like bronze tripods. The Olympics changed everything. They happened on a fixed, predictable schedule. You couldn't just show up and win. You had to train for 10 months and swear an oath. And the prize wasn't gold, it was a simple olive wreath. Because it created a new type of human currency, pure prestige. Winning at Olympia meant you were elite on a global scale. The data backs this up. The number of bronze animal figurines dedicated at Olympia skyrocketed from just 160 in the 9th century to a staggering 1,461 in the 8th century. Wealthy men from Attica, Argos, and even Italy traveled to this remote river junction just to display their massive wealth. They brought gorgeous, expensive bronze tripods to leave behind, ensuring that a constant stream of travelers would see their names and know their power. While men were fighting for glory at Olympia, a quiet technological explosion was happening on the docks. The Greeks learned how to write again. Ever since the fall of the Mycenaean palaces, Greece had been completely illiterate. But as Greek sailors began mingling intensely with Phoenician traders in eastern Mediterranean ports like Almina, they noticed something incredible. The Phoenicians were using a simple system of symbols to keep track of trade goods. The Greeks took this Phoenician alphabet and did something genius. They added vowels. The Phoenician script only used consonants. By adding vowels, the Greeks made a language that was incredibly flexible and easy to speak out loud. But here is the twist. You might think they invented writing for laws, history, or business contracts. But the earliest surviving Greek graffiti isn't financial paperwork at all. It is completely frivolous. One of the oldest pieces of Greek writing ever found is scratched onto a wine jug from Athens. It reads, "Whoever of the dancers dances most friskily." Another famous example is the Cup of Nestor, found in a child's grave on an island off the coast of Italy. It features a witty rhyming poem mocking the epic stories of Homer, warning the drinker that if they take a sip, they will be seized by the desire of Aphrodite. This explosive mixture of overpopulation, intense social competition, and new technology created a pressure cooker. The mainland was getting crowded. The social stress was too high. So thousands of Greeks made a radical choice. They jumped into wooden boats and sailed into the unknown West. This wasn't an organized, state-sponsored colonization movement. There were no powerful governments to plan these trips. Instead, it was driven by restless, ambitious individuals. Some were fleeing miserable poverty. Some were running away from family scandals or crimes. Others were just looking to get rich quick. They sailed across the open sea and founded apoikiai, which literally translates to homes away from home. Look at the settlement of Pithekusai on the tiny volcanic island of Ischia. Within a single generation, this remote island outpost exploded to a population of nearly 10,000 people. Why did they go there? One word: metals. Pithekusai was perfectly positioned right next to the massive iron fields of Etruria in northern Italy. The coming of the Iron Age had made bronze obsolete. If you didn't control iron, your community would be wiped out by your neighbors. Greek traders at Pithekusai set up a massive, continuous supply chain, moving thousands of tons of raw iron ore back across the Mediterranean. It was a wild, cosmopolitan frontier town where East Greeks, Euboeans, and Near Eastern Phoenicians lived side by side, trading goods, swapping stories, and reshaping the ancient economy. This massive expansion completely rewrote human history, but it also triggered a dangerous, bloody conflict back on the Greek mainland. As these newly rich traders returned home, they brought back a radical new idea that threatened to destroy the traditional kings forever. To see exactly how this newly found wealth triggered the rise of Greece's brutal, ancient tyrants, click on this video right here.